Welcome back everyone to the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, the final race of the weekend here, and it is the Ginetta GT5 Challenge and Ginetta G40 Cup, their third race of what has been a busy old weekend for these drivers, and they've put on some great racing. The second race of the weekend earlier on today was particularly exciting, and it was that man there, John Bennett, who came home a race winner. He won yesterday's race on the road, but was later given a penalty for overtaking under yellow flags. Andy McEwen and Jack Oliphant here to talk you through all of the action, and action there should be plenty of, I think, here, Jack, with two different grids of cars, two classes, a Pro and an Am class within each of those. We used the phrase, I think, that we didn't know where to look in the earlier race, and that was so true, because the battling across both categories was intense from start to finish.
Absolutely was, yeah. There's about 4 sets of trophies to be given out, which shows you how much there is to fight for here in the GT5 and the G40 Cup. But, well, in fact, some of our shots there, it looks like a car park, doesn't it, waiting for McDonald's drive-through to open. It's there's so many cars all waiting, queuing up, and there's some fantastic drivers as well. And we did see a little bit of argy-bargy, but we saw also a lot of respectful racing, door-to-door, side-side action. It was fantastic to see.
Yes, it absolutely was. John Bennett, in the end, won the second race by a reasonably healthy margin, actually, because Will Aspin and Josh Steed, who had been catching him in the middle part of the race, then got embroiled in a battle for second. It was Aspin that came home second, and Steed in third. Steed was the race one winner after that post-race penalty for John Bennett. That's in the GT5 Pro part of the field. Then you have the GT5 Am category. That was won by Harry Mangan earlier on, Chris White. And then within the G40s, it's the same story. The Pro class won by Mark Warren, the Am class won by Andrew Willis. And you can see at the top of the shot there, the gap between the GT5 grid and the G40 grid. The same chassis, but the GT5 cars are on slicks. They've got more power. They're being driven by generally more experienced drivers. And so they are the cars at the front. David Elsley put on a good show in the previous race as well, gaining quite a lot of ground from a relatively lowly grid position, and he will be looking to do the same again, this time starting from the third row, because the results of that previous race now dictate your starting positions for the final race of the weekend. So John Bennett gets the pole position with Aspin alongside him, and Conor Grady there on the outside of row number 2. He should be one to watch as well once we get this final 20-minute race of the weekend underway. Track conditions are decent, still cold, still very windy, but the rain has miraculously avoided us pretty much all day. We had a bit of a shower earlier on, but it's not really affected track conditions, and so they've actually got pretty good conditions for racing. Nice cool ambient temperatures. The warm-up lap, though, will be important to try and get some heat into the tyres, some heat into the brakes, and prepare themselves for 20 minutes of racing action. Green flag lap does now get underway, and as the cars move off towards Paddock Hill Bend, we'll have a chance to look through the grid. John Bennett on pole position after winning the second race of the weekend, with Will Aspin alongside him, 2 Elite Motorsport teammates sharing the front row. Josh Steed and Conor Grady share the second row of the grid, and then Harley Horton has David Elsley, former Fiesta racing champion, on the third row. Row 4 for Mikey Doble. He slipped backwards a bit in the previous race, should be one to watch in this one. Conor Garlick, his Zentech teammate, alongside him. Then it's Will Roachford and Will Orton rounding out the top 10. On the 6th row of the grid, Magnus Kruklevi and Ignacio Zanon are on the 6th row together as we get towards the back now of the GT5 Pro grid. Owen Hizzy and Nate Hodgkiss, who was handed a penalty for track limits abuse in the previous race. Haytham Caragiuli had a spectacular off at Sheen Curve. He lines up 15th. Harry Mangan, the GT5 Am winner from earlier on today, is with him. And then on row 9, Chris White and Chris Threadgill, the next 2 GT5 Am drivers. Phil McGarty and Paolo Santi are next. Santi came from the back of the grid in the previous race and picked up a few positions as he went along. Then we have on the 11th row, Bal Sidhu and Mark Steele. Just behind them then, we are towards the back of the GT5 grid. Karim Sekat had a spin. Sean Peters for Brakel Racing is with him on the 12th row. Then Mark Warren and Tom Holland. Top 2 G40 Cup entrants, both running in the G40 Pro category. Nick White was on the podium with them in the previous race, having got past Bren Maud midway through the race. Then the third row of the G40 grid is where we find the AM front runners, Andrew Willis and Jeremy Sussex, 1-2 in the previous race. So 1-2 on the AM grid for this one, ahead of Stephen Moore and Peter Dillnott, who had not one but 2 spins at Surtees Corner. So he'll be hoping for a cleaner race this time. Tony Whitney and James Turner are next up for SVG Motorsport. And then just behind them, we've got Andy Cohen-Ray and Rupert Laslett, who again both had some dramas in the previous race. In fact, Laslett was a non-finisher, as was Brendan Hafner, who will hopefully line up at the back of the grid. I don't think there was too much damage done to those cars, so they should be there at the tail end. So lots of storylines to have followed over the course of the weekend, and I think regardless what happens in this race, Jack, we're in for a competitive season. GT5 Challenge in particular, a lot of new faces actually. A lot of the drivers that have been at the front of this championship for the last couple of years have sort of moved on elsewhere now, as of course you should do. This is very much a feeder championship to other series. So predicting the winners this year is harder than ever, but I think we are definitely in for a competitive year.
There definitely is, yeah. It's I think there's 4 protagonists that we mentioned in the first race that was broadcasted today. It's Josh Steed, Conor Grady, John Bennett and Will Aspin, who are all still at the top 4. So if you're going to be looking out for a close race, the top 4 is definitely, you don't have to look too far away from them. Mikey Doble, though, he was rapid compared to the drivers around him. David Ellsby defending hard from him. In the end, Doble couldn't get through, actually fell back a little bit. So it looks like we're about to grid up, so I'll hand back to you, Andy.
Yes, I agree with you that those 4 have had it kind of their own way this weekend, but I would definitely wager that David Elsley and Mikey Doble are going to be a factor in this championship by the time we get to the end of the year. Elsley with a couple of years of GT5 experience now. Doble, though, is only in his 2nd ever meeting in the car, and he was 4th place yesterday, his best finish of the season so far, the number 88 car that starts this one from 7th on the grid. So I think we're going to see more and more drivers as the year goes on. Same is true in G40 Cup, becoming competitive and winning races. Right then, the final race of what has been a brilliant and busy weekend here at the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. The Pro Tire Motorsport Ginetta GT5 Challenge and Ginetta G40 Cup about to get underway. Red lights go out now. Away they go. Good start made from the 3rd row by the orange and black car of David Elsley. Not a great start made, though, from the outside of row 1 by Will Aspin. So it's going to be Bennett that leads into turn number 1. Josh Steed up the inside into 2nd place. Conor Grady's 3rd, and then side by side for 4th with Elsley up the inside of the slow starting Aspin. And he moves into 4th place as well. The G40 Cup cars get underway further back, and it looks like it's pretty much grid order. Change for the lead in GT5. So up the inside goes Josh Steed from 3rd on the grid. He leads them coming out of Druids for the first time. Conor Grady has slipped through into 2nd as well. And now David Elsley goes round the outside of John Bennett to try and claim 3rd. There's a bit of rubbing as they come out of Graham Hill Bend. Inside line for Bennett, outside line for Elsley. The blue and black car of Aspin will be keen to try and make up for lost ground here as well. He's in 5th place, gets a better run out of Surtees than the 2 cars ahead. And as Elsley gets sort of roughed up a bit there and run out wide, so Aspin goes back through into 4th. Well, Jack, that was quite a lively first half of that, wasn't it?
It was, and it's not finished there, because you said it, you called it, Elsley to be keeping an eye out on. Well, Aspin did get caught out a little bit. He's trying to fight his way back up the order. It's so imperative that they get, close enough to be sort of touching distance from the front 2. If they start to drop away, fighting between each other, you could see the end of the top 2, the fight for 1st and 2nd for the rest of these drivers. But look at this, even the midway down the order, there's still fighting going through Sheen and through Sterling as well. And I mean, there's so many of these cars, it's impossible to know where to look, but they're all absolutely on it. We've had a fairly clear, I didn't say it, not commentators goods.
That is Phil McGarty, I'm afraid, who has gone off and now needs to try and wait for a gap in the traffic. But of course the G40 Cup cars are there now, and so he's going to have to wait probably for most of those to go through as well. Right, out of Clearways and Clark Kerr for the first time. 1 lap about to be in the book, so in Hizzy there up the inside of Hayden Caragiuli as they come across the start-finish line. It's Steed that leads, Grady 2nd, Bennett 3rd, Aspin 4th, Elsley 5th, then it's Horton and Mikey Doble still 7th. Roachford is 8th. Magnus Krickleby, I noticed, in the red and white 66 car was making a move into Sheen Curve. He had a spin at Druids in the earlier race, so he's back into the top 10 now. Hayden Caragiuli up the inside of Owen Hizzy. Caragiuli looking to still have a car to race, quite frankly, after the massive moment that he had at Sheen Curve in the earlier race. No real damage done, but it could have been quite a substantial accident. Lead gaps here shrinking, I would say, Jack. It looks as though we're going to have, instead of just a leading quartet, maybe a leading quintet this time, because David Elsley is very much part of this fight.
He is indeed. Look at Aspin now getting the run potentially on Bennett, who definitely isn't going to have it as all his own way. He may have won 2 races on track. Obviously, he got one of them taken away and he kept the other one. But he's definitely not leading away with the championship at all, is he? There's plenty of drivers who are really there to sort of try and keep him in touch, keep one hand potentially on the championship themselves. And just like to say a quick shout out to Phil McCarthy. It's a shame to see him spinning around. Without him, I actually wouldn't have been able to get into the track at all. He gave me one of his tickets to kindly jump up here for the CoCom. So big thanks to Phil, and I'm lucky to see him lead the circuit in that way.
Yes, although it could have been worse because you don't tend to have a small accident at Sheen Curve, so the fact that he had relatively little damage is a bit of a win in a way. Right, out of clearways we go again. The leader this time, Josh Steed, starting to make a bit of a break. He was 0.6 of a second ahead of Conor Grady at the start of the lap. At the end of lap number 2, that gap has gone out, I would venture. Well, it did by about half a tenth to 6.5 tenths now, but it might keep going up if Conor Grady has to continue to defend here from John Bennett and Will Aspin. Aspin now has the fastest lap, actually, the blue and black car, which goes to the outside line as Grady and Bennett become ever more preoccupied with each other. They almost forget that Aspin's there, and Will tries to take advantage of that to move ahead of them into a podium place. Bennett with a bit of a wiggle there into Graham Hill Bend. That compromises his exit speed. Aspin tries to get up the inside, but he's got to be careful because David Elsley is on the grass. David Elsley is in 5th position, trying to take advantage of any loss of momentum from the cars ahead of him.
It's amazing the racecraft that you learn in these series, especially the GT5s and the Ginetta Juniors, really. So many cars on track, they're so close to each other as well, all learning their craft. It's amazing to watch, to be honest, as well as it is to be driving in, I'm sure. Never driven a GT5 in anger, only ever on a test day or 2, but they are good fun to drive. You can left foot brake and blip with the right foot as well as you're going up and down the sequential gearboxes, or you can heel and toe like Matt Neal does in the touring cars. It's completely up to you. I'd say probably left foot braking is ultimately quicker, but Matt Neal is a touring car driver and I'm not.
Yes, indeed. But you do know a thing or two about touring car and indeed racing in general. Right, Conor Grady, 2nd place, defending ever more now to try and keep John Bennett and Will Aspin and David Elsley and even Harley Horton, you could argue, behind him, because Harley is closing in the Elite Motorsport car there, the yellow and black one. And then if you're going to count him as part of this fight, you sort of have to include Mikey Doble and Will Rochford as well, because they're not far behind him. So this group is going to keep on getting bigger. So too is the gap between the top 2, because now what was a 6.5 tenth of a second cushion for the leader, Josh Steed, is up to 1.3 seconds. John Bennett to the outside of Conor Grady into paddock, but that leaves the door open for the ever opportunistic Will Aspin to try and get up the inside. He darts from the inside to the outside, back to the middle, because he's got Elsley behind him. There might be a gap on the inside. He climbs the curb into the gravel trap, though, has gone to 48. That's Ignacio Zanon, and unfortunately it looked like he might be able to dig his way out of that gravel trap, but it caught him in the end, and he is stuck in what I would call a vulnerable position there.
Yeah, I don't want to call a safety car. Hopefully we can keep it out. Maybe he can get himself just spin the wheels and just by fluke managed to get himself out of the gravel trap, but be keeping an eye on the top of your screen to see if the safety car does come out. At the moment, we're green flag racing though, and Conor Grady's got a problem on his outside into Hawthorns, and that problem is John Bennett, and it looks like he's got his car up ahead, nice and clean. It makes the apex, he gets a good run as well. Oh no, he's not! He's gone straight into the tyre wall. Oh, that's absolutely good.
Oh dear, I mean, I think it's raining, you know, because it's suddenly gone a lot darker at that part of the track. I think it's raining on the GP loop. Yes, look, windscreen wipers are on, and that has caught John Bennett out just at the moment that he claimed 2nd place. And out of nowhere, Will Aspin is now 2nd, with David Elsley 3rd. The track is getting wet quite quickly, actually, out of that part of the track, and this is going to continue to catch them out. Up the inside goes Will Rochford, that is, who's the fastest man on the track. A 1:41.5 on the previous lap was a new fastest lap, and he has got himself ahead of Mikey Doble and now ahead of Harley Horton. John Bennett is out of the car, but that is a lot of damage done not only to the car but also to the rector barriers. The car is buried in the gravel. We've got a car off at paddock. I think yes, there we go, the safety car is coming out. I sort of saw that one coming, and that lovely 4-second lead that Josh Steed was enjoying will disappear in a flash. They're already actually in the process of recovering Zanon's car from the Paddock Hill Bend gravel trap, but what drama, changeable conditions, and we made the point earlier on, these cars, the GT5s at least, do run on slick tyres. They're all out there on what are probably going to become the wrong tyre.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why we point that out, if anybody is more used to watching the GT5s, the GTAs that we just covered, they just run on road tyres. It doesn't matter whether it's wet or dry, they run on the same tyre. And here is a replay of Zanon just going off. Maybe, I don't think the rain had reached Paddock Hill. I'd like to make that excuse for him, but I'm not entirely sure. We didn't see rain as that happened, but right here, I thought he'd done. I thought it was fantastic. We didn't know it was raining, and straight into that wall. We know he's all right. We've seen him get out of the car, which was fantastic. We've made the point quite a lot, Andy, that the cars are strong, aren't they? I've tested them a fair few times in my time. Probably kissed more tyre barriers than I have people in my time, but they are brilliantly strong, Ginetta.
Indeed they are, but sadly, slick tyres in wet weather are enough to catch even the most experienced of drivers out. And I'll tell you what, full marks to the camera operator down there at Hawthorne for catching that, because he sailed into the corner so quickly, it looked as though he was just going to disappear, but we just caught him as he fired himself at the scenery. As we say that, it now starts brightening up and the sun starts to come back through. Such has been the way the weather has worked, really, over the course of today. This very stiff breeze that's blowing across the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit is sort of allowing the weather to move through pretty rapidly. Right, let's run through the order then. It's Steed that leads, Aspin second and Elsley third. That's in GT5 Pro. In GT5 AM, it's Paolo Santi that leads the way, ahead of Chris Threadgill in second position, and then Harry Mangian in third. They are 14th, 15th and 16th places overall. In the G40 Cup, the Pro category being led by Mark Warren from Nick White and Brendan Ward, and then in the AM category it's Rupert Lasler from Jeremy Sussex, and the 37 car, which is Andrew Willis, is rounding out the top three in that category. So they are your podium sitters as it stands across the 4 classes of car that are represented out there. There's even a teams championship as well, so there are 5 championships in total being fought out in these 2 championships, essentially, or 2 grids of cars. And of course, one other thing that this safety car does is it brings the G40 Cup cars, who are just coming into view. There is Mark Warren, in fact, the Raceway Motorsport driver leading in G40 Cup. It brings them back onto the tail now of the GT5 Challenge cars, which do have a natural pace advantage over the G40 Cup entrants. But the safety car now means that they are all back as one. So, halfway through the race then, we're behind the safety car. Could do with a bit of a mid-race breather here, Jack. It's been a very eventful first half of the race. You've got a feel for John Bennett there, though. He was doing everything right. He moved his way into that second place, but the weather can catch anyone out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if that's why Conor Grady sort of let him have the position and maybe pulled up and came off the accelerator. Maybe just sort of felt the conditions and maybe he just thought it was confidence rain and that he'd just sort of come off it. But in the end, it is gutting that we see a driver fly into the barriers like that. But luckily, they are, the circuit managers and the circuit designers do know that that's a hot spot, so they do protect it heavily. With any luck, like you said before, I wouldn't say the sun's coming out, but it's brightening up just a touch. As long as we get that car into a safe position, which can take its time, especially if we have to rebuild any kind of barriers, we'll be able to get the safety car out of the way and we'll be able to enjoy the last maybe 5 minutes of racing, because frankly the GT5s and all the Ginetta racing today has been absolutely brilliant, and we wouldn't want to see it finishing on the safety car, would we?
No, absolutely. Ginetta have put themselves in glory once more this weekend, putting together some really big grids, competitive grids, and good exciting racing as well, which is exactly how we like it. And Ginetta, long-term partners of the British GT Championship, good to have several of their championships racing with us over the course of the season. So we have 5 laps in the books. Josh Steed looking good. Well, was looking good for race victory. Of course, things might well have changed now. Josh Steed could do with a win here because he's second in the championship. I know it's only early days, but it's still worth looking at championship standings, I think, because all the races count for points, of course, even if it is early in the year. Josh Steed dropped behind John Bennett by a few more points after this morning's race. He is 14 points behind Bennett, but of course Bennett is out of the race now. So for Steed, for Aspin, for Elsley, second, third and fourth in the points, it is important, isn't it, then, to capitalise on this. And as a driver in Steed or Aspin or Elsley's position, you'll have seen, John Bennett go off into the barriers, and you'll be thinking, right, got to maximise this opportunity now.
It's vital, yeah, but equally you can maximise it and you can throw it away so easily by trying to maximise it. If you're looking at Elsley's in third place, yes, it would be better to come in first because he's in fourth in the championship and he can try and pull some more points back. But realistically, anything they get now is an advantage to them in the championship. So they need to just keep their heads, keep it nice and clean. The conditions may well change again. The safety car is still out there at the moment as we're coming through the last corner now. But just a bit of a note on Josh Steed, actually. We get all the drivers, don't we, to fill out a bit of a driver form for the commentators throughout the season. And his pre-race ritual is that he watches Ricky Bobby before every single race. So maybe that shines through on his driving style. But also, he's only 18. His home circuit is Brands Hatch, but he's the director of Champion Car Leasing and Financial Advisor. So for an 18-year-old, that's pretty impressive. He can not only drive a car pretty quickly, apparently he can lease them as well.
Yes, well, there you go. He's got to fund his racing somehow, I suppose. Yeah, at least he's going about it, generating the money by himself. We saw a quick update of the weather there. It's grim, basically, is my assessment of it. The wind is really, really strong. And there you can see the wind. That's what strong wind looks like. The Brands Hatch flags on top of the circuit commentary tower are barely hanging on to their posts. It's been a pretty difficult day to be a motorsport fan, actually, but do you know what? Even though the main event, if you like, of the day, the British GT race, finished a couple of hours ago, there are still a good number of spectators here who have been waiting months and months to be able to get back trackside and enjoy live motorsport, and they're not going to let a bit of wind and rain put them off, are they?
Not the Brands Hatch faithful, that's for sure. No, they love it any weather, don't they? It's, I mean, why would you? You've waited this long, what, over a year to have spectators back at a circuit. You find the lucky few. I think we had 4,000 here today. I mean, normally we get about 30,000 or something stupid at Brands Hatch, and yeah, there they are. It may be raining, but they're still out there with the cameras taking pictures and with their camping chairs. I mean, look at that man sat down there. He's not leaving for any kind of weather, is he? He's ready for the elements.
It is days like this where we wonder why we go and stand outside at a racetrack in the wind and the rain, but when the racing's been as good as it's been today, you can't really blame them, can you? Hopefully we'll give them a bit more racing here to round the day out. There you can see the nice socially distanced Paddock Hill Bend spectators. That's a great place to go watching. You really do get to appreciate how steep that drop is through Paddock and back up Halewood Hill. The cars sort of appear to be coming right at you as they hit the apex of Paddock, and then they plunge down below you. Fantastic place to come watch racing in general is Brands Hatch. We are hoping to get maybe another 4.5 or so minutes of racing for them and for you at home to round out our weekend here in the Pro Tire Motorsport Ginetta GT5 Challenge. Josh Steed would be quite happy, I suppose, if the safety car stayed out for another 5 minutes, but Will Aspin and David Elsley in particular, who really could do with the points after a disappointing weekend so far, they'll be hoping we go racing very shortly. Sadly, though, lights still on the safety car, and I think this is, to the point you made earlier on, Jack, it's not just a case of getting the car of John Bennett out of the way, but because he dislodged those Recticel barriers up against the tyre wall, they take maybe another lap to put back in place, and they have to be put back in place because if one driver can go off there, then anyone else could, and you have to make sure that the circuit furniture is back where it belongs.
Absolutely, yeah, and the marshals, to be fair to them, do a brilliant job, don't they? Not only clearing the cars away, but also building those barriers back up. And I've been a driver who's gone off into those barriers, and they're so nice, the marshals, that I genuinely have to apologise to them afterwards to say sorry that I'm in such a bad mood, because they're so nice and they're so passionate, the Orange Army, and they're doing what, when we said about the supporters being in the rain and everything like that, these marshals, they don't care. They love it out there in the rain and helping the racing get going, and they're a fundamental part of British motorsport and world motorsport as a whole. And really, they're the reason why we have any chance of going racing and finishing off the day not under a safety car.
Got a glimpse there of Andrew Brightman, who runs the British GT fan club page on social media. If you are a fan of British GT racing, then go along and join the conversation there. I'm sure Andrew will be happy to let you join in the fun, and I'm sure will tell us he's having fun stood out there on the Marshall's post, but he'll also, I'm sure, be counting down the seconds here before this final race is done, and he and the rest of the Orange Army can go and find somewhere warm and dry to sit. Right, 3 minutes to go. Best case scenario then, we're going to get one more racing lap in here, because by the time I'm in a safety car lap, the last lap was actually bang on 3 minutes, so even if the safety car gets a wriggle on, we're not going to have time for anything more than one racing lap. We'll see as the cars head out onto the GP loop now. Maybe we'll get a view of what the state of play is down at Hawthorns, where John Bennett went out of the race a little bit earlier on. Yellow flag still waving at the top of the hill. The one good thing about this safety car actually is that since it's been out on track, the rain has been and gone. So during the period at which the track conditions would have been at their sketchiest, they've actually been running around behind the safety car, so they've almost dodged a bit of a bullet there.
Yeah, and they've been able to try and keep their tyres warm, which is a stark contrast really to what we saw in the GT Academy, isn't it? We were speaking about that during their race, and the attitude of the car for this entire 5 minutes or however long we've been under safety cars. You can see on the left there, they are trying to build it. It looks like there's not much movement apart from the car on the outside, and there we go, the JCB or whatever he is trying to get away as quickly as possible. So with any luck, he'll just tuck himself in behind the Armco, and we can get racing this lap for that one flying lap, which obviously is what we're all craving for, apart from probably Josh Steed.
Yes, I think Josh would be quite happy, as I said, if the race ended under safety car, because he would take 35 points for taking the race victory. That would move him into the championship lead. It looks as though he's backing the field up, so we are going to get a one-lap shootout then in our final race of the weekend for the 2021 Pro Tire Motorsport Ginetta GT5 Challenge. To remind you, it's Josh Steed that leads the way. It is Will Aspin in second position, the blue car. David Elsley is third, looking for his first podium of the season, I believe, David Elsley, with Conor Grady in fourth position. Out through clearways we go then, racing back underway with just over 60 seconds left on the clock. They pour out of Clark Curve, come across the start-finish line, and a decent restart there for Josh Steed. He's got a few car lengths advantage over Will Aspin in second, Elsley in third. The big battle could be further behind there. Lock up for Aspin in second. Cold brakes, cold tyres, easy to do that on a restart. He kept it on the island though, thankfully, and he now is running out of options really, isn't he, if he wants to challenge for the lead, but that's exactly what he does at Druids.
Yeah, Will Aspin just looking up his inside, isn't he? I thought Steve got a fantastic start away from everybody else. I thought the top four pretty much got a really good clean start, but it looks like Steve didn't quite carry as much speed through Paddock Hill that Aspin did, and to be honest, it's easier to catch than it is to be caught, if you know what I mean. So Steve looking defensive already. That's going to really hurt his run. If I was anyone, I'd want to be Elsie at the moment, because he's got a fantastic run out of all doors. He's trying to weave all over the place. Steed has managed to stay ahead. Aspin now has to look behind, but here comes Conor Grady.
Oh, Conor Grady got a run on all three of them, pulls to the outside of David Elsley. This is for third position. He goes round the outside and takes it from him. So Elsley is now back off the podium again. Does that though, free Will Aspin to have one last go at getting past Josh Steed. We've got less than half a lap of racing to go through Westfield, down through Dingle Dell, another huge plunge downhill, and then they climb steeply back up the other side again through Sheen Curve. Will Roachford meanwhile keeping Harley Horton at bay for now, with Mikey Doble in behind them. 2 corners to go, but we know from other races today that is plenty of time for the lead to change hands, and it wasn't a good exit there from Sterlings for the race leader. Aspin has got Josh Steed on the ropes here a bit as they go into clearways for the final time. It'll be a drag race to the start-finish line, but as long as Steed gets off clearways well, which he has, he should be able to come home and take the race victory then. Josh Steed is going to be twice a winner at Brands Hatch in the Pro Tire Motorsport Ginetta GT5 Challenge. Second goes to Will Aspin. Yes, Steed wins. Aspin second, Grady third, Elsley fourth, with Will Roachford in fifth position. Now, in the GT5 AM category, it's Paolo Santi that takes the victory. In the G40 Cup, meanwhile, we're looking for Mark Warren, who goes across the line there in the number 50 car, and we have possibly lost, have we, on the final lap, the number 22 of Mark Steele. He's not registered as having come through, so Warren gains a place overall, but still wins the G40 Pro category from Nick White, and the G40 AM category is going to go the way of, yes, Rupert Laszlo. Thank you, Jack. We're in a field of nearly 40 drivers. Finding the class winner down in 25th isn't always that easy. So Laszlo wins, Sussex second in G40 AM. Well, we may have only got one lap of racing there at the end of the race, Jack, but a great battle. Will Aspin threw everything at that. Some brilliant side-by-side racing, but in the end, it is Josh Steed that comes out on top.
It is indeed, yeah. Obviously, Elsley lost out on that podium, so a good move from Grady, taking advantage of the fact that the 3 cars ahead of him backed themselves up. And to be honest, it's a brilliant GT5 championship and a good advert for it.
Yeah, most certainly. Here is the result then. Just 0.2 of a second, less than 0.2 of a second, in fact, in it between Steed and Aspin at the flag. Conor Grady third, David Elsley fourth, and Will Roachford in fifth position ahead of Harley Horton, Mikey Doble, Magnus Crookleby, Conor Garlick, and Will Orton in 10th Hodgkiss was next ahead of Haytham Caragiuli. Owen Hizzy, Paolo Santi was a class winner in GT5 AM in 14th place ahead of Chris Threadgill in 15th, second in class, with Harry Manchin joining them on the GT5 AM podium. Then further back, the G40 Pro ranks were headed by Mark Warren and Nick White, having finished 21st and 22nd overall, with Brent Maud joining them on the podium. He, though, was behind the top two G40 AM finishers, Rupert Laslett and Jeremy Sussex, with Willis, the number 37 car, Andrew Willis, joining them on the G40 AM podium. So entertaining stuff from the front to the back of the final Ginetta race of the weekend. The GT5 Challenge in particular producing more of the usual wheel-to-wheel action. Right from the word go, there was shuffling of positions going into the first corner, as it was John Bennett who managed to get the race lead going into Paddock Hill Bend, having started from pole position. The GT5 Challenge drivers headed through Paddock Hill Bend, whilst further back on the opening lap, Phil McGarty had a spin going through Sheen Curve, a spectacular rotation, but thankfully didn't ever make contact with anything solid. A battle for second place broke out pretty early on, which was allowing the race leader to make a bit of a break until a few drivers started having dramas. Ignacio Zanon went off at Paddock Hill Bend, and John Bennett then had a really big shunt down at Hawthorne. He was okay, but the safety car was scrambled. It was out for some time, leaving us with only one lap of racing afterwards. It was Josh Steed that had the lead by this point, and he did his best to try and make a break over that final lap of racing, but wasn't really able to do so. Will Aspin was all over him as they went through Paddock and Druids, tried to find a way past, but as he did so, David Elsley and Conor Grady reeled them in as well, with Grady eventually moving up into third place. A fantastic weekend of racing then rounded out by a brilliant second victory for Josh Steed. We'll be back with more Ginetta GT5 Challenge racing next time.